Hello Steelers, and welcome to this follow-on from the Ask Me Anything Live session that I did. Well, it depends when this video comes out, but a week or a couple of weeks ago now. And I did ask people if they want to ask any questions outside of the live, because I know some people don't always get to see the live stuff that I do. So I put out the call and I had a few questions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually work my way through them and answer them one at a time, and that's what this video is going to be about. So it's a little bit of an Ask Me Anything follow-up. Also, you can check out the other original Ask Me Anything live that I did over on the live streams playlist on the channel, so go and check that out as well. I will put a link to it as well in the description below in here. So the first one, I'm doing these almost in the order that they came in originally, but it's not perfect because they were on about 3 or 4 different platforms, so I can't remember exactly who asked what, when, and how. So, but these are the ones that were asked. So first up was from Atli Refsdal. I'm assuming somewhere up in Scandinavia somewhere, Atli, and he said, "What are your most important criteria when deciding on rule sets for solo wargaming?" Well, I don't really consider myself a solo wargamer, although most of the 90% of the games that are played on the channel are solo wargames. That's simply because of circumstances rather than anything else. So that's more to do with me not wanting to interrupt my mates' games when I'm playing with them. So that's why it's easier to do it solo. So I don't really think about it. I don't really think about a set of rules as a solo thing, because I think pretty much, with a few exceptions here and there, most games can be made into a solo game quite easily. So you could pick up anything really. I guess though, to answer the question, I suppose I like friction. So I like a lot of the two Valor games, because a lot of those are very easy to play solo, because they force you to think on your feet, and you generally only operating 1 or 2 units at a time, and not everything in one army. So you can basically play one side to the best of your ability and then swap over and play the next side depending on how the cards come out. So like short practice, for example, you don't know which leader is going to come out next or which flag card. The same with chain of command. You don't know what the dice rolls are going to be. That makes it a lot easier for a solo game, I think. So I suppose that's the kind of the criteria, I guess. It's the amount of friction that's in the game that allows it to be not so balanced that you can unbalance it by being solo, if that makes sense. So if you are, if you know exactly what the enemy is going to do, then you can do something against it if you are able to move everything in a turn, for example. So I suppose that's the important criteria, is the amount of friction in there, really. Andrew Frank said, "How did I get started in wargaming?" This goes back a long time, Andrew. It goes back to when I was a kid. I was always interested in military modelling. I was always interested in military history as a nipper. I used to make 1/35th scale tanks from Tamiya, and I also used to paint 1/72nd scale Eschi figures, mostly Napoleonics. And then when I went to big schools, when I was about 11 or 12, one of the guys I was in a class with, we had to do a show and tell thing, and I brought in my Eschi figures. So I didn't really know what to do with them. I just used to set them up and in battle scenes, and that was about it. And I took them in, and he saw them, and he said, "Oh, have you ever thought about wargaming?" And I said, "No, I don't even know what it is." And he introduced me to it. His name was Jonathan Harris. I still remember it after all this time. And he actually introduced me to micro tank wargaming, 6mm tanks, and that was kind of my first introduction. So right from the start, I was playing historical games. The day that he told me about it, I went home with a pal, and we basically made up some rules for the figures. There was no formations, we just set them out everywhere. You could either move a figure, I think it was something like 12 inches, or you could fire, and you had to roll over the amount of inches on a dice, and that was if you hit or not. It was something like that, it was something as basic as that, but that was my start on wargaming. So I was about 11, 12, 13 or so. And then when we were at school, one of our teachers, history teachers, he was a wargamer as well, so he used to allow us to go and use his classroom while he sat and marked stuff at lunch times to go and have a wargaming group up there. So that's kind of where, that was my first developments into wargaming, I suppose, when I was a nipper. Scott said, and I don't think, I think Scott might have said they asked this in the live, but I'll answer it here because he did ask it twice. If it's Scott Miller, he said, if in one of your older chain of command battles you use a blinds method for enemy placement in a solo game, but most of the more recent ones seem to use the try to play both sides fairly approach. Do you have any tips on how best to do that in a solo game? Tips? Not really. Just do it. It's the short answer. It is a bit of a you have to kind of reset your mind a little bit and think, you know, we all have our favourite armies, and we all have the sides that we want to win more than the other. You know, you may prefer, I don't know, the British over the Germans in the Second World War, for example, or I don't know, the Prussians over the French in the Napoleonic Wars. So you're automatically, you're always going to be biased. I mean, humans always are, but it's a case of kind of switching that bit off out of your brain. And the more you do it, it's just practice. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the easier it is for you to play like that. And I don't, you know, I break my own rules by trying to play it the best I can, because you kind of know what you're going to want to do with the next side. So it's never 100% unbiased, but it's just a case of solo gaming. Solo gaming is more about really exploring ideas than winning or losing, and I think that's something that you kind of have to think about when you're doing it. You know, think about having a small force against a large force, an overwhelming force. You know, just have that in your mind and see how that plays out. Just do it as a narrative thing rather than a you know, as a like, right, I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna play a scenario and one side's gonna win and one side's gonna lose, and you know, just see how long a small enemy force can hold out. See if a small unit can get off the table while it's, you know, being pressured by overwhelming odds. That kind of thing. I think that. So you know, you don't have to play them fairly really in that case, because one is not going to be fair, but it's how far or how long can they last really. So that's I think, you know, approach it differently. Use it as a bit of a way of exploring games that you wouldn't normally play with and against an opponent. You know, because nobody wants to get curb stomped. But if it's only you that's only got a small force against a large force, it doesn't matter so much. You know, that's kind of what I'd say. This one came up. Andy Shaw asked if you could have a bird's eye view of any battle in history, which would you choose and why? This did come up in the live chat, and again, I don't know which. Possibly Waterloo, I think, just to see it really as much as anything else, and because at least you'd be able to pick out which soldiers were which because of the uniforms. But I'd probably be interested in any of the larger battles like Kursk and things like that as well. But I think they'd be pretty horrible to watch, to be perfectly honest. It would just be interesting to see how they play out compared to, you know, how they're written about and what we know about them and things. You know, see how much is actually correct from a historical point of view. But yeah, watching them wouldn't be particularly nice. You know, that's why I choose to war game with toy soldiers, because it's not as nasty as real war. Andy also asked, who is your favourite Judge Dredd character and what's your favourite storyline? Favourite Judge Dredd character is Judge Dredd, of course. Who else would it be? You know, it brings out the psycho in me. I love Judge Dredd. He's just such an anti-hero. I think he's fantastic. He's great, you know. And the favourite storyline has got to be America, which is now, you can get it now as an individual graphic novel with an extra story tacked on the end. But it was originally in the magazine when that first started. I can't remember the guy's name who did the artwork, but really good painted artwork, fantastic, brilliant, and a great story as well. Very emotive and interesting, and just a great story. Check that one out. America, Jewish Dread. Andy Dr. B said, regardless of period, what's the Wargames rules you played that required the minimum tinkering to make them work for solo games and give the game best gaming experience? Chain of command. Short answer there for you, Andy. Yeah, just chain of command. Because I personally think it's my favourite game. I think you'd have to go a long way to beat it as a game anyway. But I think just as a solo game it works. And to go back to the previous answers, because you don't know what's coming, so you roll those command dice, and you don't know if you're only going to be able to operate a team, or you're going to be able to operate your entire platoon that turn. So it really keeps you thinking, and it's great for solo because you can only play as to what you've rolled, so it works really well for that. I think that's the and to be honest, I very, very rarely tinker with rules. I generally try to play the rules as written, simply because well, when I can remember them. That is, when I can remember the rules. But I figure most games have, in most cases, I say, most games have probably gone through a large amount of play testing to get them to the publications point. There's a few games that I would tinker with, and that is stuff like, we played it recently, The Men Who Would Be Kings, and I would tinker with that simply because it didn't do the thing that I wanted it to do. But the games that I play, that I like to play, are the ones that I don't tinker with, because I think they work already, Ralph Astley says, did you decide against reviewing Blood and Valor? If so, I'd like to ask you what your thoughts on them for your question and answer session. I did review it. I'm in two minds as to whether to release the review though, Ralph, because as a game it works pretty well, I'm sure. It looks a lot like Games Workshop stuff to me. It's got a lot of stat lines, you roll d10s. There's a relatively interesting bidding system in it to decide which unit goes first and which one doesn't. However, historically it is not a historical game. There's actual historical mistakes in the rule itself, where it says certain things. It is not a game for if you're looking for a First World War historical war game. It's a game with a First World War skin, and that's. So I'm just wondering whether to put the review out, because the review is pretty negative, and again, far from me thinks I don't really want to be negative about things that people have put a lot of work into, or maybe other people like. But it might come out at some point. We'll see. Andrew S said, you just mentioned you have to work, so what do you generally do for a living? Well, currently I have two jobs. I work for the Ministry of Defence, or what's called the Defence Infrastructure Organisation here in the UK, which supports the Ministry of Defence, and I work there as an archaeology advisor. So my role is to look after the archaeology of the training areas that the Ministry of Defence owns and make sure that they are protected. I also have another part-time job where I work for the Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trust, and I work as a community archaeologist, setting up projects across the Sheffield Lakeland landscape area, and that is to get people involved in archaeology and history, and we've been quite successful in doing that. So they're my two jobs. I've worked as an archaeologist for over 20 years at this point. Miles, hello Miles. He says, Miles Reedy from Little Wars TV. He says, why will you not have an online refight with our dashing LWTV chap Miles? Surely you can send a mere colonial like him packing rather than accept a shameful tie. Well, if that's you throwing down the gauntlet, Miles, I am more than happy to take you on again. Just name your time, name the game, and I will kick your butt back across the Atlantic. I'd be honoured to play against you, Miles, and it was great to do it in the first place. We'll do it. If you want to set it up, I'm happy to sit and play from my side. Otherwise, I'm happy to set it up on this side. Lee Fisher said, question. Of course it's a question. It's got a question mark at the end, Lee. The RUB really useful box behind you seems to have cardboard boxes inside. Is this a genius storage message or something else? It's a genius storage method, but they're not cardboard, they're MDF. They are really useful box liners for storage that I bought from, well, you can get them from Sally Forth, you can get them from War Bases, and you can also get them from Commission Figurines, and I've got some from every one of them. They're about anywhere between £3 and £5, depends where you get them from, and they fit perfectly into the really useful boxes, and you can get them in different sizes. From, I mainly use a 35mm size ones, so I can get 4 into a really useful box, or you can get 40mm ones, which will do 28mm figures, but the 35mm ones are perfect for my 15mm, so that's what they are. So check those out. I'll put a link to them in the description. And then the final one was Sam. He said, my question would be, do you ever kit bash individual models for vehicles or fun for a purpose? I've picked a joy of it, making random baddies for Stargrave, but historically it's only gone so far as switching heads so I can get a peak cap on an officer or the like. No, because mostly I play in 15mm, so I have done it, but it has, similar to you, it's only been switching heads. Peter Pig do a lot of head swaps, and I did it for my Malaya Indians, because there were certain weapons that they did but they didn't do for the Indians, so I just bought a load of turbaned heads and swapped those over for the British heads and changed those around. So that's really all I do. Again, it's like the rules basically. I don't mess about with stuff so much. I kind of leave it as it is as I buy it. I suppose I don't know if putting stowage on things is called kit bashing. I mean, I'll use second and third seller stuff to put stowage on vehicles and things like that and make it a bit different. But apart from that, that's probably about as much as it is. Because I'm mostly doing historical stuff, you can generally, at least in 15mm, you can pretty much buy most mark of vehicle that you need, so there's not much point. And you know, I don't really, apart from again from the, I guess, kit bashing on the Gasland stuff that I've got, that's probably about as kit bashy as it gets, really, I guess, with me. Alright, so that's the last one. So, well, thanks everybody for putting those questions in. You never know, when if this channel hits about 10,000 subscribers, I might do another one and see if people are up for that again. So thank you for everybody jumped in on the live chat, and thanks for everyone who left a question. Hopefully they've answered them, and I will see you in the next Storm of Steel video.